There will be a question and answer at the end of it, so please have your questions ready, and John will take the microphone around so everybody can hear, okay? Are you ready, Bob? Mr. Yuko, Nishimura.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I have to apologize that I changed the title slightly because of the time constraint that I can only talk about Japanese tannery workers. And also I noticed that you know already a lot, far more than me about British tanners. So I thought I can easily skip it. And also, I would like to send my wholehearted gratitude to SLTC because because of their offer that I could give a presentation today, and also I could bring 3 people from Japan. One is Mr. Kashiwa, who is the tanner from the hereditary family in Himeji, Hyogo Prefecture. Mr. Kashiwa. And after my 20 minutes presentation, then you would be seeing 23 minutes of video, and there he's making something, himself, and then he brought those artifacts for SLTC. So after the presentation, I would like to give this gift to the president of SLTC. And secondly, I would like to introduce you Mr. Hasegawa, who Mr. Hasegawa. In fact, he was a TV producer before he quit the job. He made more than 20,000 TV programs. And he was pretty famous in Japan, but then he quit, and then he's now teaching in Japanese art college at the audiovisual designs. And that's why he made this video for us. Just, his labor was free. And then he's accompanied by his daughter, Miss Akane, who is the web designer. Have the whole troop, and then we set out to make some kind of a series of video on the history of tannery workers in the world, and this is series 1. And first of all, for 2 days since we came here, that we were very much excited about everything, and particularly Mr. Kashiwa was very happy after visiting the abattoir and also the vegetable tannery in Britain. And then we met a lot of people from SLTC, and they were very much proud of their hereditary job as tanners. And that was really a very big difference between Japan and Britain, that although we have the 1,300 years of history of leatherwork, but the peculiar thing is that most people who belong to this community as a hereditary profession are just too afraid to talk about it openly because there are a lot of discriminations against it. And what I'm going to talk about today is really this gap that between Britain and Japan, why British tanners can be so proud of their social status and why not Japanese ones. So that I'm going to answer in this presentation. Please look at this chart of British leatherworkers' guilds. And the tanners' guilds were relatively new, but others such as cordwainers and then skinners and curriers, they all started very early. And like the cordwainers or shoemakers, that was as early as the 11th century. And they have been well known for its wealth and history. So in Britain, my first, discovery in UK was that the formation of guilds reflects the history of self-governance, that the quality control of leather was done between the guilds of different sections, that the leather produced by tanners was checked by cordwainers, and if the quality was not good enough, the tanners had to take it back and redo it. That's what you know very well. And then curriers and skinners and all others had to follow the rules set up by the guild themselves. So it was not the government. That is a big difference between Japan and Britain. So there are more than a dozen diversified guilds of leather professions regulating each other. But in post-medieval England, the leather-related business and production roughly absorbed 15% of urban workforce. And in Northampton, the ratio went up to 22 to 25%. So a lot of people worked in this industry, and then there was no reason to hide. But why do we have to, why our hereditary tanners have to hide this hereditary origin? So in Britain, the guilds were powerful and had money, so they also backed kings and political leaders to the advantage of their political support. So it was very hard to control the business from the top. But it was completely opposite in Japan. That's what I'm going to talk about. So you might have heard of this white leather of Himeji. This was introduced to the world at Paris International Exhibition in 1867. So it became very famous for its amazing whiteness, strength, and softness. And also the greatest advantage was its amazing cheapness. How is it possible? Because of cheap labor. This cheap labor was tied to the hierarchical social system of Japan. I would say that is the caste system. So, you can see the tanning process white leather in the video later. So I'm going to explain a lot in the video in 23 minutes. But people in Himeji used only salt, rapeseed oil, and a fermented rice husk for tanning. Because the river took care of the rest of it, the process was very simple. But so because the river had aluminum and good bacteria to just increase the processing. But what was very essential was the hundreds of hours of labor. Without it, this leather cannot be as soft and white as the legendary Himeji leather. So these are the white leather. Which is still, which was handcrafted, but it's no longer possible because the last person who had this technology died about 2 years ago, and he was the national treasure. So now, let's go back to Shakespeare. So you know very well that tannery owners, such as Shakespeare's father, in the 16th century was wealthy, and then they were often moneylenders. And then Rodrigo Lopez is the model of Shylock. And he was the Sephardic Jew from Portugal and a physician to Queen Elizabeth I. And in exchange for the medical fee, that he got an exclusive license of sumac import from Europe, which was an essential thing for vegetable tanning. And he was a tannery owner as well, and also a moneylender. So you just please remember this combination. That he was physician, he was tanner, and he was a moneylender. Please keep it in mind. It's very important now. Then, what about Japan? Then here's the Japanese Shylock. Here's Japanese Shylock. So, here's the Japanese counterpart. This is actually in Kabuki. He is called EQ. And the villain, who is a filthy rich guy, he is a moneylender. And he is finally defeated by a very handsome hero. So this EQ, the villain, in fact, he is very much related to today's story. And then here's the handsome guy with the geisha girl, and then this filthy rich guy is defeated. Then The thing is, interestingly, that this repertoire in Kabuki is one of the most popular ones. But the background of this Ikkyu, the villain, is hidden, except that he is a villain and he is filthy rich. That's all. It's very ambiguous, but there is a model. And in fact, his model is the chieftain of Tanas, the hereditary chieftain, who is called Danzaemon. But Tanas in Japan were considered the lowest of the low, the untouchable caste. But they were very much multitask people. They were tanners, physicians, moneylenders, bailiffs, crime hunters, jail wardens, ninjas, entertainers, garden architects, and Roland priests to remove the ritual pollution. So no play was founded by those people. The most famous no play founder and also the philosopher was from this untouchable community. And then Kabuki, you name it, the Bunraku, and then physician. The gentleman who is in the center is really from this community, untouchable community, and then he is surrounded by the samurai doctors because they don't know how to do the human dissection. He was teaching them. But his name is not recorded in the history. Only the samurai doctors' names were recorded. And then here's the Zen garden. And then the important thing is that in order to create this kind of nature, then you have to transform the nature into culture, into this garden. And only some special people could do it, and they were the untouchables. So they were very much skilled sort of craftsmen, but they were the untouchables. So they were also the ritual specialists. And then look at this costume, and then without their purification ritual, then they couldn't, the temples and then the shrines couldn't do the rituals. So what is related to tannery? That is very much confusing, isn't it? But then we are going back to this history soon. But this is a gentleman. This is the 14th, the last Danzaemon who inherited the regime. He controlled the untouchables of 8 regions and 12 countries in East Japan, and he was filthy rich. And he looks like a samurai, the warrior. He's got the swords, and then his mansion was like 3 baseball park size. It was huge. It was an institution, and it was a ghetto. This one I'm talking about in Tokyo, and in those days it was Edo. Only they had to live in the area called the ghetto, and then they were called the filth, literally. And they were not allowed to come inside the city. So, when a livestock dies, a villager had no rights to dispose the carcass. He had to hand it to the local untouchable chief for free of charge. And in each village, there was a place of carcass disposal, and only 4 regional untouchable leaders were allowed to take the carcass. So it was a kind of their privilege. After the tanning, all the hides were sent to Danzaemon's office, so he'd get it back. And then he would distribute the hides to local craftsmen. They are all untouchables. And then for dressing and making leather goods. So he would get the back margin, of course. And the finished products were sold only to the local lords, big merchants, or directly to shogunate. So big merchants were the capital providers and would take a big cut. On the other hand, craftsmen were given only a pittance. So you could see this kind of status, the hierarchy, the pyramid. You have the chieftain, who is also the untouchable, but he was very rich. And he would directly just connect himself to the big merchants and then the local lords and shogunate. So this is the big difference between Britain and Japan. So the tanning and then crafting were undivided, and the workers were just called the filth. If the skin and hides were in shortage, the government would import from China or Korea. Under Tokugawa regime, no one else but shogun had the power to import skin and hides for special purpose. In fact, the import of skin and hides control continued up to the 20th century. Until the 1950s, it was controlled. And it was finally liberated in 1960s. So these are the workers, how they were doing the skinning and tanning. And this is the old map of Edo, the pre-modern Tokyo, where shogun resided. In the center, you have this there is a palace here. And then look at the river, and then look at those red quarters. These were all untouchable communities, the neighborhoods. And then this was already showed up in Google map as the antique map in 2010. But the ex-untouchables community strongly protested to Google, and Google was forced to remove it from the internet. The reason was that if these areas are detected, then people who are originally from this community would suffer from discrimination. The untouchability still exists in Japan in marriages and job hunting. So, as you can see this map, these are the areas geographically on the fringe of the capital. So you see very clearly the kind of dichotomy between the center and then the peripheral. So they were living on the margin of society, but also they were called the riverbed people. What was going on in the riverbed? Of course, there is tanning work. You need lots of water. So the tanners were there, and then the execution would take place there, and then there were a lot of entertaining sort of activities going on, and you have so many interesting things are going on. But a riverbed was not livable for ordinary people because it would be flooding. So from here, Kabuki was born, No was born, and famous No philosopher was born, and they were all from the untouchable community. And this is really the 19th century photo of a deerskin tanners. So they look decent, and in fact, this kind of skinner's job, skinning and then just tanning, give them some extra money. So it seems to be obvious that they were much better off, in fact, than the ordinary peasants who are really squeezed to death because they didn't have any kind of skills other than producing rice and so on. But they were different. And in fact, the modern period didn't do justice to them, that their kind of expertise was taken away in the 19th century after the Meiji Restoration. So if you are familiar with the latest Hollywood movie called The Last Samurai, you may recall the battles between the samurai warriors loyal to the shogunate and the armies of the emperor. So for many centuries, Japan had a figurehead emperor, while real power rested with the shogunate. With the Meiji Restoration in 1864, power was wrested from the shogunate and returned to the emperor. That happened because of the black ship led by the Commodore Perry, an American naval officer who forced Japan to open up the country. So this was the kind of, ukiyo-e painting, which was described in those times by the, people of Japan, that it was a horror, that you could see the black ship and then the cannon. And then the kind of horrifying barbarians just came. This is Commodore Perry. And in fact, this is Commodore Perry. But you could see the kind of horror story the Japanese faced, that we have to do something, otherwise we would be colonized. But then this was something unprecedented. And then our torture starts. So this is the last chancellor of the shogunate, Naosuke-ii, who was infamous for his ruthless imprisonment of dissidents because he didn't want the emperor win the game. So he tortured the dissidents and killed them. And in fact, he was assassinated in 1860 by a group of samurais. And this assassination was said to have opened a path to the Meiji Restoration. But according to one story, it wasn't based on politics, but it was on the anger of the samurai's lord, who was a beef lover. Why beef lover? His enmity just stimulated his subject, and they attacked him and they killed him. Everything rests in the beef. According to this story, Naosuke was a vegetarian and he was a Buddhist priest. So, in keeping with his Buddhist principles, he closed down a cattle ranch which was operated under the pretext of taking the hides of cattle for the shogunate, for armors. But in fact, the purpose of the ranch was to raise the famous omi beef, a specially soaked one in miso. So Naosuke, as the vegetarian, stopped the annual gift of beef to the big samurai lords. So the Lord of Mito, the beef lover, asked Naosuke to resume the gift giving, but he was curtly turned down. So having been humiliated in public, Lord Mito's samurai subjects attacked Naosuke with a vengeance, and the path of the revolution was opened because of this. And it was locally called the sukiyaki attack. The sukiyaki is the favorite beef menu for Japanese. But this did seem to have happened. So, what happened was now the emperor's restoration took place, and then he started a reign again in 1864. So, before the restoration, he was like this. And now he changed into this. And look at him that he's wearing shoes. This is completely different. And now he turned like the German emperor. And this is the kind of modernization they understood. Then, the torture of shoes starts to us. For ordinary Japanese, wearing shoes was something like a torture. Even the soldiers didn't like it. And then, immediately the untouchables started, becoming the shoe repairers and shoe polishers. But then look at this one. That the soldiers really hated it. It was like chained, because understandably, your size of shoes was different from ours. Your size is just longer and then narrower. Ours is smaller and a little bit broader. So naturally it won't work, but then the modern army needed it, and then the elite bureaucrats needed it, and then also the police force needed it. For ordinary people, those wooden sandals and then the straw sandals were okay. But it was a torture. That means we have to produce shoes as soon as possible. So that is the kind of mission. Then what happened was that the gentleman, the last Danzaemon, the chieftain of the untouchable community, was filthy rich, and then he started this factory, shoe factory, plus the training center. And he hired an American technician called Charlie. So he trained his untouchable community people because he wanted to give them some skills. Because of the new government, the privilege of just taking the raw hides were lifted and then taken away. And then anybody else could enter this business. So unless he just does this kind of transformation quickly, he would keep his untouchable fellows just on the streets, and then he couldn't bear it. He couldn't bear the idea. So also this emancipation took place for this untouchable community, and then the new government announced that they are no longer the filth, but they are the new commoners. But imagine that you have the commoners and then new commoners, and it's registered. So it's obvious that the new naming for the untouchables, modern untouchables, is just the new commoners. So, in exchange for this new commonership, they lost the privilege of carcass processing and also the job as bailiffs. Then, that is really the important thing that, this gentleman bankrupted. So his shoemaking business didn't succeed. Then who entered this business? That was the samurai merchant, who was a very rich man as a gun dealer, and he introduced a Western technology of systematic shoemaking factory. And he was awfully successful because he had a good connection to the army and the bureaucracy. So in those days, military and elite bureaucrats and the police were the only big consumers of shoes. Then he was able to, because being a samurai, then he had good connection to the government, and then he could fetch the deal with the army. And then look at this picture. This is the police force. And then the new government just fired all the bailiffs, which were just maintained by the untouchables, and then they introduced a new system from France. That was the new police force. And then you have to wear the modern uniform, and then of course you have to wear the shoes. And ironically, these new bailiffs or the policemen who are from the low-class samurais were really wearing the boots and shoes which were made by the ex-untouchables, who were ex-bailiffs. So, this is the shoe factory of Meiji era. A lot of women are working for low wages. And even to this day, thanks to Danzaimon's training center of shoemaking, many ex-untouchables continue to work as tanners and shoemakers. And the most well-known region for the leathers in Japan is West Japan, particularly Himeji. So this is the Hyogo prefecture. Here you have Tokyo, here's Fukushima, and then this is Hyogo prefecture, and here would be Osaka. And then this is Himeji. And then about 73% of monthly carbohydrate production is done in Hyogo prefecture alone. And of course the major part is done in Himeji area. And this is the legendary castle of Himeji, which is called the White Crane Castle, and this is the international treasure of UNESCO. But many people in Japan also don't know that in Himeji or in this region that there is such a kind of big leather industry. Because even if you are a resident of Himeji, a lot of people just don't talk about it. And then if children ask their mothers what those kind of people are doing on the river, the tannery work, their mothers may not answer them, and saying that you shouldn't ask such kind of questions. And these were the kind of background of Japanese tannery workers, which continues to the 20th century, and today is the 21st century. And now we'll show you the legendary Himeji white leather making, which was reproduced recently. So this is really embossed in Himeji leather, the famous castle. So this was the first international treasure of UNESCO. So, what happened? So it's now under restoration, so you cannot go inside. But the technology of this castle is 300 years old. It's a beautiful city. And leather was a money-making business for big merchants and the local lords. So this is the famous river Ichikawa, the incubator of Japanese white leather. So this is Japan. So how, first of all, the advanced technology of tanning came to Japan. Maybe 1,800 years ago, from China via Korea, people came. Just like Huguenots and Jewish people came to Britain and then improved the tanning technology, this kind of improvement occurred from this migration. So those craftsmen just were brought to Japan the high technology. And then those Korean tanners tried in several places, but then it didn't work. But finally, in Himeji area, they found this river, and it worked miraculously. This has the aluminum and then the good bacteria. And they settled here. And then the first founder of this tanning was enshrined in this village of the untouchables. So this is the founder's shrine. He's now a god of leather. So in this manuscript, in this script, old script 1,300 years ago, this white leather is already made in Himeji area. So this is a traditional football practiced by aristocrats. This is a kind of ritual. So why such a special white leather was born in Himeji? People wondered, but then they couldn't find the answer. And then there were several answers that maybe there was good salt available in Ako, and then there was a big market, and also a lot of labor in the untouchable community. So this is Himeji. And then in a nearby place, you have this river flowing. And then Ako produced good salt. And to this day, this method of salt pan is repeated in this area, and this salt is very famous, good quality salt. So the salt was moved to Himeji, transported. And then there was a big market like Sakai. The merchants were very active in trade. And you have the shops flourishing, selling leather strips to townspeople. It was very expensive, but then it was a kind of valued commodity. Aristocrats and commoners both loved Himeji leather. So Himeji leather was as white as snow and soft like cloth. And in 1950, German researchers came and tried to find out why, how they made it. It was the labor also that people in this area, the villages who are making this white leather, came from the outcast community. So hundreds of years they were discriminated against, and then poverty and inferior living standards. But mind you that they were still a little bit better than ordinary peasants, because they could get a little bit of cash, because other peasants were just, starving. And then here are the skinners and tanners. And then the leather was used in armors and many daily tools and slippers and sandals. A little bit of strip was enough for those straw sandals and wooden sandals. So this one also uses part of leather. So this is the abattoir we visited. This has the latest technology. Look at the way they cleanly cut and then remove the skin. Even a lady can do it because it's all made by machine. It's so light. It's so easy. But in fact, those people who are working in the abattoir are not making enough money. They have to do some part-time job after this is finished. So here's a gentleman from this community who went to Germany and got a certificate as a Grand Meister. A master craftsman leather. He's fluent in German and he got this license as a Meister. So he and his friends in this village decided to reproduce the really real Himeji white leather. So he is the third generation Tana craftsman. 昔から伝わっている白なめしというのがどうしてこんなに柔らかくて白くなるのかというのが不思議で大変それはですね、一番にしますとこの皮の中にあるバクテリアがですね So he concludes that special bacteria. But that's not enough. That you need to notice that this one contains aluminum. But a lot of labor. First soak the skin into the river. Just like that. And then apple salt. Spend hundreds of hours until it gets really soft. You need hundreds and thousands of hours and hours. If this one is not enough, it doesn't become soft and white. This is most essential. So it seems this white Himeji leather was used as the belt of the Buckingham Palace girls, much earlier. So it was a status. Anyway, this is his license as Meister, Grand Meister. So this is his family, his wife, a German wife, and then daughter. This is the village, Takagi, but it's deserted. But this is an exceptionally good tannery, the vegetable tanning. They seem to be exceptionally good. So this is the site of former chrome tannery. So hexavalent chromium was detected, so nobody buys this land. So this is Mr. Kashiwa, who is now present in this room. After he closed down his tannery, he started educating kids and then school teachers. So now he's a missionary of tanning. So I tried, but it was very hard. I can't do it so evenly. It requires special skill, of course. I don't want to ruin this skin. And you smell the rice husk fermented, very nice smell. He uses salt, fermented rice husk, rapeseed oil, and the river, that's all. So this was his tannery. It was a family business. that's the one. He's making this box now. So he dries the hides for 2 weeks, and then the color gradually mellows.
して、This box 1300年前に日本の正倉院という玉物宝物にあるんです。それを私見て復元したんです。
So this is a reproduction of the box which is in the treasure house of the emperor, built 1,300 years ago. He saw it and then, well, he couldn't touch it of course, but then he reproduced it. So the real one just puts the Japanese black lacquer, but then he made puts the sheer lacquer, but the way they made it is exactly the same. That's his message.
Japanese white.
Is that the real one?
ジャパニーズホワイトレザーと違ってこれはぬかで直してるんです。ぬかで木を抜いてるんです。
So Japanese white leather doesn't use the rice, fermented rice husk, the soft one, but then this one uses the rice husk, fermented one. So that's a little bit different, and this is a thick leather, there's thick skin.
だからサマー、夏ではぬか臭いです。
So if you do it in summer, it smells awfully a lot.
だから気温が17度、水温が15度ぐらいの状態についたら匂いは出ません。
So if it is in a cold weather like in England, like 17 centigrade, then it won't smell.
だけどぬか臭いというのはそれはほっとけば自然に発酵して発散して匂いがなくなります。
So if even if it smells, then if you leave it, then the smell will go away naturally.
Thank you.
Please, if you have any questions, please raise hands. Yes, okay.
Hello, Raymond Blakey. I'd like to congratulate Yuko on a different and very entertaining lecture. And I'm very pleased that at last tannery workers have been recognised as human beings, even in Japan. But the question I'd like to ask is that the processes you've shown us are very labour intensive. And have you any idea of the cost of making this wonderful leather? And obviously, it's got a place in the commercial world, so presumably you're selling it.
So it doesn't match the market at all.
だいたい原皮から製品が1月かかります。
So it takes 1 month to make that white leather.
体力はものすごくいります。
You need stamina.
私は70になりますが、理屈は分かってもそれをせいと言ったらできません。
He's 71 and he knows the theory, but then if he is forced to do it, reproduce it perfectly, he can't.
71です。
It's impossible, yes. 71. Yes?
Thank you. Just I have one question. I want the type of the bacteria which makes whiteness of the leather.
In fact, the bacteria, there was some research paper which was in fact mentioned in this one, and then I don't know that the name of the bacteria because I'm not a chemist. But if you read that paper, you would be able to, find it. All I know is that it really accelerates the processing.
Any further questions?
Any further questions?
Sure. Well,
Yes.
okay.
You said that the workers were discriminated against. I've worked in the industry all my life until I retired from it, and I've never discriminated against them, so I remember in any way. How were they discriminated against? Were they set aside from society, or how did that operate in practice?
Well, they were discriminated against from the normal people. That means that this history, just like Indian caste, that you might be a doctor, you might be a lawyer from this community, but then just because you have the hereditary, connection to this community through blood, then you are one of them, and then that's how they discriminate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Any further questions?
Right, go on. Ask a question then.
質問なんですか。
I'm Dr. Jila from Nigeria. Yeah, considering the process that you have just shown us, would you want to tell us that what actually took place was tannage? Because after the use of salt, you didn't go further to show us what went on to bring about the cross-linkage. Because what I saw actually wasn't tanning.
何をドイツの博士が日本へ来てそれを調べて半なめしです。中途半端ななめしだそうです。
You are right. A German researcher came to Japan and he saw it and he said that this is half tanned. It's not a proper tanning. And this gentleman knows the bacteria, the bacteria you question.
バクテリアと言いますね。市川の水は最近水を分析したら薄い溶板が含んでおるから白くなるんです。
So it seems that this one, really Ichikawa River contains the aluminum, the diluted aluminum. That's why it whitens the skin.
上流に行くの鉱山がありますから、その鉱山の降水が流れていくんです。
It might be from the mines on top of the hill, and then that was flowing into the river. That's the kind of answer.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.